Hey students, welcome to our next unit on Southwest Asia. For those of you who are M through Z students and you'll be actually taking the test on Europe after you start this chapter, I apologize, it's a little bit weird. It's kind of the way things are going in this time of hybrid. However, I don't actually want to give you the map work, which we typically start out with when we begin a chapter, because I think that would be a little too much confusing kind of area to get into. So we're just going to do a few slides of notes today, and then I want you to do one short assignment for me. So we're actually combining a couple of chapters here, chapter 21, 22, and a little bit of chapter 23 as well. But we'll start with Southwest Asia and more of the basic physical geography of it. So the region of Southwest Asia forms a land bridge between Asia, Africa, and Europe. It's this perfect kind of area. A lot the way we talked of the Balkan region was a crossroads between Asia and Europe. Southwest Asia is really kind of a crossroads between three continents, Asia, Africa, and Europe. Because of plate tectonics, part of the region is kind of pulling away from Africa. And we can see that in the Arabian Peninsula. The Arabian Peninsula is considered to be Saudi Arabia. And then the Anatolian Peninsula. And the Anatolian Peninsula, if you look at that map right there, that's essentially what Turkey is. We call it Anatolia or the Anatolian Peninsula, and is kind of sliding past Asia. Now, of course, this has taken, millions upon millions of years, but this is kind of the shift in the landscape. The most distinctive landform is the Arabian Peninsula. It is separated by the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. We think that at one time, the Arabian Peninsula probably was part of Africa, but the Red Sea has kind of, divided it, and we see it juts out into the Persian Gulf there and then into the Indian Ocean. The Arabian Peninsula has a strategic waterway for trade through the Suez Canal. Now, the Suez Canal is vitally, strategically important in world history, and for those of you who are freshmen, next year in world history, you'll get into the importance of that. But for now, I just want you to understand the location of it and that it is a very important area. Now, the Suez Canal was dug, kind of how we talked about the Panama Canal. It was a man-made canal. The Suez Canal was a man-made canal because mostly the British, but also the French were involved in it. And of course the Egyptians as well. They needed a good, fast passage to get from the Mediterranean, from areas like Great Britain, to what they considered to be the crown jewel of Britain, to India. And this took away a long travel time, because otherwise they had to go around the entire horn of South Africa. And this way it cut off a lot of travel time. So the Suez Canal was very, very important. The Anatolian Peninsula, they have some straits that are very advantageous to trade, the Bosporus and the Dardanelles. Now, the reason I say they're very advantageous to trade is because of, if you see there just in the corner, the Black Sea. Well, there's if you know about the Ukraine, and there's an area called the Crimea. Well, there's heavy oil resources as well as a lot of other natural resources that are coming from this area north of the Black Sea. And so that means ships can come into the Black Sea with their very large ships. They can take the natural resources such as oil, for instance, from the Crimea, and get it out of the Black Sea and into these areas of Africa, Asia, Europe, and all throughout kind of this Mediterranean region. And so the Bosporus, you can see right there by Constantinople. Istanbul, you understand, is Constantinople. In the old Byzantine Empire, what we consider to be part of like Greece today. And then the Dardanelles. If you look at Gallipoli right there, the Gallipoli Peninsula, you don't need to know that peninsula particularly, but Gallipoli is really important, and also, again, the history of the world because there was a famous battle that had happened at Gallipoli. And all I'm going to say is there was one group who lost, and they never lost a naval battle, and they lost a naval battle there. But anyway, because of the connection between the Black Sea and the Aegean to get into the Mediterranean, these two straits, a strait is a narrow passageway, were very, very important as well, very advantageous for trade. Some plains, mountains, and water bodies. So there's a lot of plains in Southwest Asia because it's a pretty much dry, sandy region. I mean, there's some vegetation in certain areas, and of course, different geographic locales are very much based on where they're located. But for the most part, there's not a whole lot of good, strong vegetation. Now, they have other valuable things, which we'll talk about heavily here in a couple of days, but mostly the nomads. Nomads are people who they were nomadic, they were roamers. They didn't necessarily have a permanent home. They would take their animals or livestock and they would go searching for water from one place to another. They had pretty much adapted to harsh living conditions in search of water for their animals and for themselves as well. We know that way back in the Bible, in biblical times, nomadic tribes were the ones who picked up Abraham's son, Ishmael, and we know through the line of succession that Ishmael essentially became the great 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 grandfather of the founder of Islam, Muhammad. And so the nomadic tradition has been very, very strong because it's such a dry area. And so we really understand the connection between geography and history and culture and all of these kind of forces coming together. What they're typically looking for were wadis. Wadis are dry riverbeds that fill during rainy seasons. And you can almost see there's one that's washed out. That would be a wadi right there. When there's rains that do come, they kind of fill up, and that's where nomads would bring their animals because they know that these lower lying areas are where water tends to collect. Some mountains. There's some pretty impressive mountain ranges in Southwest Asia. They are very much, just like any mountain region, physical barriers that isolated parts of the region. So waterways are also very important, but some of the mountains that I want you to know about, the Zagros are in western Iran, the Elburz Mountains are in northern Iran, the Taurus Mountains are in Turkey. I have a picture there of the Taurus Mountains. It looks like it's rather sparsely vegetated. If you see, there's some trees, not a lot. Definitely snow covered, very rocky, probably not a lot of reserves of, I don't think it's even been deforestation. I just don't think that there's a lot of tree growth that happens in the Taurus Mountains, or at least in some areas of them. All right. And the last thing that I want to get to, because of, I'm going to move over here, because of the mountainous areas, the water bodies are becoming very important in these areas. Water bodies such as the Tigris and Euphrates, the oldest kind of unknown water rivers in the world. These ancient rivers were the cradle, we call it the cradle of civilization, means where civilization was born, where human beings showed their first civilizations in the Fertile Crescent area. And if you even look at the Fertile Crescent, you can understand the way the Tigris and Euphrates run. And kind of Baghdad, Iraq, we know is pretty much where those two rivers come together. The Jordan River, very important, also biblically important in history, serves as a boundary between Israel and Jordan. We know it's the Jordan River where Jesus baptizes John the Baptist. Sometimes you hear it called the Jordan River or the River Jordan. It's the same thing. The Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is really interesting because the Jordan River feeds the Dead Sea, but in about the past 40 to 50 years, they have been diverting the Jordan River and making diversions that actually take water from the Jordan to other areas to help with agriculture. And so the Dead Sea is actually getting less of the flow from the Jordan River that it used to. And so it's this very landlocked salt lake. And over the past 50 years, it actually has even become more saline than it used to be. And what I mean by that is basically there's salt deposits. It's salinity, um, because there's so much, between the temperature and the atmospheric pressure in the air. There's not like a lot that happens. There's so much salt, and it actually literally like sucks the water out of the air because the air is so dry. And this salt kind of turns into like chunks, and it's very, very interesting to see. It is the lowest elevation on Earth. Like if this is like flat, like it's way, way down below the basic elevation of the Earth. And so rapid evaporation leads to very high salt concentration. In fact, such high salt concentration that you can see that man floating there. The reason why he's able to float is from the River Jordan's, any of the flow that comes from the River Jordan. If you go under the Dead Sea, even probably about 40, not even 40 feet, maybe 20 or 30 feet, you will see deep, deep deposits of salt. And in some areas where the Jordan has not been able to get to, mostly because of diversion, you just see the salt actually rising to the top. But in this case, there's fresh water there, but it's so saline that literally the man is floating in the water. I mean, he's that buoyant. It's very, very interesting. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to click on this YouTube link and watch this. It's about a 5-minute video on the Dead Sea. It's about the Dead Sea Scrolls, actually. And I want you to think geographically and kind of historically and biblically when you read this. And I want you to answer the two questions. I have them posted both on Haiku and on the assignment link that you can upload on the assignment link. And I want you to think about these couple of questions. Why here? What was the purpose? And do you think it was a good idea? You know, these are opinion questions that I want you to back up with your own assessment and knowledge. So watch that. It's just a few minutes long, and make sure you kind of answer them with a geographic mind. So until we see each other again, talk to you later. Bye.